I will say record to the cloud.
Okay,
And
we're doing
then
it now.
I don't know if do I have the control to record?
I can do record to the cloud
Okay.
if you haven't. Oh, wait, it just disappeared. I think, oh, you're recording now.
I am recording. Okay.
So we'll have to like splice this off.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Don't worry.
Okay, cool.
As long as I have access. I mean, you're gonna have to send me. Well, I'm hoping it'll send
No
me the
problem.
link.
Yeah, no problem. I'm so
All right,
glad.
it's 7. I'm gonna let people in.
Okay, I can do it. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, guys. I know you're muted at this point, but I will ask to unmute. Hey, Leslie.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm starting
welcome.
my video.
Kevin,
Okay.
Anthony, good to see you guys.
Great to see everyone. Welcome to Asian American Images in Film, Media, and the Arts, with Christian O of the Asian Pacific American Film Festival. So happy to have you, Christian.
It's good to see all of you.
It's
been too long.
discussion.
Kevin,
Yes.
Anthony, Gina, I know. Gina's part of the DCAPA Film Board. So
okay,
we work together.
We work together, and she also works at
Nice to meet you.
She also works at the Smithsonian for the African American Museum. So
right.
National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yeah. All right. We always give I always start about 5 minutes after the hour because we call that Zoom time, people trying to get on. And I know, Leslie, you have to run. You've got another event at 8. So I will be mindful of that. Just so you know how we're going to do this, Lisa will introduce me, and then we will go into my definitions of the 7 G stereotypes. And then I'll ask many of you both, and I'll introduce the main people that I want some feedback on. That's Kevin, Leslie, Anthony, and Gina, in regards to what you guys have seen in terms of these stereotypes. We're all pretty much familiar with them, but there are 7 specific that I'll talk about. So.
Hey, great. So before we get started, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. I'm with Silver Spring Town Center, which is presenting tonight's program. And this is the final of our, we had several programs in celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And they were all a wonderful array of programs. So this is our final one with Christian tonight. Our next event is called Follow Your Bliss, How Taking the Road Less Traveled Can Lead to Your Best Life. It's a large panel discussion with Maurice Philogene of Quattro Capital. We also have Ramtin Arablouei with NPR's Throughline. We have Joy Carr from United Therapeutics, Dr. Cheryl Brissett Chapman of the National Center for Children and Families, Chef Kaimana Chi with Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds, and he's also an international chef, specializing in Pan-Asian cuisine and Hawaii. He's an expert in Hawaiian food, and I've got to get out to his restaurant out in Maryland next time I'm able.
Where in Maryland? I'm curious.
So it's above Baltimore. Oh. I looked it up because I'm in California now. I didn't get a chance to go before leaving, and I just learned about it. And I've been looking for Hawaiian food since I moved to DC over 20 years ago. I love it. Here in California, we can go, within blocks, so we can get it. We have drum circle facilitator and trainer Katie Gahn with Drumming for Wellness. We have Bump and Grind owner and entrepreneur David Fogel, social sculptor and creative strategist Philippa Hughes, best-selling author and co-founder of Courageous Leadership, Rhett Power, and storyteller and executive director of Story Tapestries, Ariana Ross. Those are all the folks in our Our panel discussion taking place this Wednesday, the 26th at 7 p.m. I hope you can join us. And then in June, we are celebrating Silver Spring Festival Blues Week. We had already planned for virtual throughout the summer, as we were told the Civic Building would not be opened, but they just announced today they're going to start allowing events. So we'll gradually head back, but we are scheduled for all of June virtually. We have our senior program, Sparkle. We have Baby Boomers, the Blues and Beyond panel discussion on Wednesday, June 9th at 2 p.m. And then Silver Spring Blues Week is June 14th through June 19th. So I hope you can join us for that. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, and many others, including this month's sponsor, Lumix CPA. And now let me introduce our esteemed presenter, my dear friend, Christian O, who is has been a pillar of the Asian American community, and as the current chair of the board of the DC Shorts International Film Festival, he has produced and directed many award-winning shorts, music videos, commercials, and public service announcements. He received his film background education from George Washington University Documentary Center, internships with Adobe at both the Cannes and Venice Film Festivals, and on-hands experience with Sundance and Tribeca. And what is there something in film Christian hasn't done? Christian is also president, executive director of the DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival, and their website is apafilm.org. He was a consultant for the first annual Chuseok Festival in San Francisco, and he loves production of all types of events and projects and has lots of experience with expos, conventions, festivals, galas, and large-scale events. He's produced some for us in the past, music dance events with Collaboration DC. So prior to that, he was co-founder and executive director of Collaboration DC, an Asian American talent competition here in the DC metro area. Christian has also been a consultant for many different events pertaining to Asian festivals, K-pop music, entertainment, and film. Christian was a former adjunct faculty for the Asian American Studies program at UMD, where he taught ethnic studies in film, video, and social media. He has lived and worked in the DMV for over 25 years. And just a side, what's that?
I didn't think you were going to go this long with my intro.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, because I think folks will be interested, the virtual 2021 DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival runs July 15th through 25th. And now let's turn it over to our presenter, Christian. Take it away.
Lisa, that was very long, but I appreciated the intro. Again, thank you guys for joining us on a Friday evening. This sort of talk and discussion, I've invited some good friends and people who I've worked with or are in the industry. We've got with us today Gina Lee, who's part of DCAPA Film Board. And then she works at the Smithsonian, as I mentioned earlier. I'll have each of them formally introduce themselves here shortly, so give me 1 second. Then there's Anthony Green, filmmaker, festival coordinator as well. He's also a man of many talents. And then there's also my good friend, Leslie Kombamale, and she is a film critic. She does events for San Diego Comic-Con. She's just an amazing advocate, and I'll let her give a little bit more background about her. And then my other good friend, Kevin Sampson, who runs the DC Black Film Festival, also a film critic, also an amazing, talented individual. Again, I'm very excited that the four of them are all here to hear me talk about Asian American images in film, media, and arts, but also give their perspectives of what they've seen over the years or throughout the history of film. So if Kevin would start it off, and then I'll go to Leslie, Anthony, and Gina, if you could briefly just say a few words about yourself and where you guys are dialing in from also. Oh, so let me unmute you, Kevin. I'm sorry. I'm gonna. There you go.
No
Go ahead.
worries, no worries. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody, I'm Kevin Sampson, director of the DC Black Film Festival. Amongst many other things, I'm coming to you live and direct from Charlotte, North Carolina. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Comal, and I run a yearly panel at San Diego Comic-Con called Women Rocking Hollywood. It's in the 6th year now. I'm always very much in need of making sure that the panel is balanced and has representation from as many different intersectional female filmmakers as possible. And also I am a film critic and I'm a member of the Washington Area Film Critics Association. And I am the senior contributor for the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. And I interview above and below the line for the Motion Picture Association's The Credits. And I give special focus to female filmmakers, in particular composers, with as many women of color as I can find that are actually getting hired and amplifying them.
Anthony.
I am Anthony Green. I've done everything from music to producing, writing. Right now, I'm a behind the scenes guy. I develop films, I executive produce films, and I also still run a couple of film festivals, and I got other things that I'm as well. But most importantly, the thing that I am the most is a film lover and a film watcher, and that's what I take the most pride in.
Awesome. And then Gina, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Gina Lee, and I work with Christian with the DCAPA Film Festival. I currently work at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So I manage special projects on behalf of the museum, and been working there for about 9 years now, and then 4 years prior at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, so 13 years total. And then I'm pretty much new to the game here in terms of film festivals and film. I critique films just as a hobby, really. But people seem to enjoy them, and really write them for myself because so I can remember what I saw 6 months, a year down the line. But it's been a pleasure working with Christian on DCAP film.
Oh, and I have one more special guest. I wasn't sure if he was going to make it on time. Kelvin Han Yi, who's an actor, an Asian American actor, and I'm going to bring him on here for just a second. Ask him to unmute. So, Kelvin, let me try to unmute you. Are you able to come on mute? I mean, off mute? I don't know if he's having technical difficulties. There he is. I see him. Kelvin, you're muted, so please unmute.
You hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Welcome,
yeah,
Kelvin.
okay.
If you could just quickly introduce yourself and where you're dialing in from. Kelvin, we don't really know each other in direct connection, but we have lots of mutual friends. So Kelvin, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here. My name's Kelvin Han Yi, and I am an actor. And geez, I'm trying to get set up here. Okay. Yeah. So I'm an actor, and I'm really just joining you to listen. Can you see me at all?
Yes, we can see you very well.
Okay.
I love the yellow tracksuit, if that's what it is.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
It's very Kill
Thank you.
Bill.
I got
Very
it
Kill
from,
Bill, very Bruce Lee. I
Lee's
love it.
daughter. She has that website, you know.
Right.
Okay,
But,
so
You're dialing in from the West Coast, correct?
I am dialing in from the West Coast, and I am I'm actually in Vancouver,
Oh,
Canada.
okay.
I'm not at home.
Northwest.
This is a hotel room,
Right.
and I'm working up here, and I'm in quarantine. So when I cross the border, they
What project
they
are
put
you
me-
working on right now? What?
I'm working on here. Wait a minute. I need this. Okay. No. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm working on Space Force with Jimmy O Yang and Steve Carell.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, it's a really cool show. I'm very
It's so funny.
yeah, it's a really funny show, and I'm playing a general from China who comes. He arrives wearing a cowboy hat, and I think it's going to be good. I don't think that.
A little bit outside of the norm of casting boxes, but as a general, that's got a very what is it? As you said, cowboy hat, Americanized perspective. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, he's a Chinese general, and here's the thing, you know, so they cast me, and I think it's very easy to demean him, to demean this character, you know, so he comes wearing a cowboy hat, and you know, he's a
It's
I
just
just don't-
it's out of the norm, is what you're saying, out of the box.
well, it's out of he's a you know, you have to give him, I think, as an artist myself, you have to give him a good reason
Right.
to have this cowboy hat on and to be a fan of what, American Westerns or something like that.
Right.
You know, and that you know, okay, so he is a Chinese general. He's born in the People's Republic of China.
Right.
He's my age, so he was maybe born even maybe around the time of the Cultural Revolution. You know, he says howdy when he gets off the plane. Okay, so you know, I think it's easy to laugh at him in a demeaned sort of way, that he's not, you know, that he's speaking with a Chinese accent,
Right.
and that he is trying to be a cowboy, and
And try to fit in.
that
It's
he's
all-
not, and
Right,
that the
it's about
comedy is
fitting
that
in.
he's not succeeding. But
Right.
here's what I'm trying to do, and we will see if I'm successful at this. I'm trying to make him, well, he's a general in China. He's not an idiot.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I think he's a fan of American Westerns, and he's a fan of country music. And I think that when he gets off the plane, he presents, I mean, he's like Kevin Costner, man.
Right.
You know, okay, he's cool, and he's a good cowboy. He's not a failing cowboy,
Right.
because he's Chinese and he doesn't know how to be a real American cowboy. I'm gonna try to present him as a guy that's actually good at, you know, maybe when he says howdy, he doesn't even have an accent when he says that,
Well, that's
because
good.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into my presentation. So you'll see here, there are 7 Gs of AAPI stereotypes. Originally, this was Dr. Larry Shinagawa of the Asian American Studies program at the University of Maryland. He had come up with 6 of them. The first one is the gook, which is also a derogatory word that is utilized to talk about Asian ethnicity. A lot of times during the wars, it was it was very derogatory using that word. It's almost somewhat equatable to the N word in African American slang. So Gook was one character that's always typified. They have as you said, Kelvin, they have a very over exaggerated accent, and those are things that you've probably seen in many movies. The next one is pretty easy. It's the geek, the nerd or socially awkward loser. You'll see an example of that here shortly. And then there's the guru, usually stemming from being a wise, sage-like person or a master, but yet never the main character, right? Always probably a supporting character, and that's the guru. Then you've got the gangster. You've seen this, I'm sure, in many films, everything from the mafia, and it just doesn't apply to males. It could be the dragon lady, the girl or the lady that's really calling the shots, the shot caller, or he's a henchman that is elevated, an elevated henchman. Then there is the geisha. We know this as being, obviously more Japanese oriented, but it's the subservient male or female, very subservient, that they're always doing someone else's bidding, whether it's another race that's in power, and it doesn't necessarily always be white, it could be other races. And then there's the gambler, the risk taker, the calculating one. You've seen everything from gambling on horses to card counting to whatever it may be. There's that one. So those were the 6 that Dr. Larry Shinagawa first came up with. But then I added the last one, the guard, which is the protector and sometimes the sidekick to the leading hero. In Green Hornet, you've got Kato being the sidekick to the Green Hornet, or any other buddy film, or even even female films where the main character has a good friend or best friend who is. You're not seeing my PowerPoint? Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing. Let me restart that. Thought you guys. Let me know if you can see it.
I can see it.
I
Okay,
see it.
you guys see it? Okay.
I can see it.
So again, the guard is probably the one, like I said, that we've seen many, many times in films where it is the protector, the sidekick, but never the leading actor. So my first question to sort of start the conversation, you guys have seen a lot of these examples. And as film critics, I'm going to start with Leslie. As film critics, does that sort of bother you when it is a very typified stereotype and the story tends to play along those stereotypes? So I'll go with Leslie first and then Kevin, and then obviously we'll end up with Kelvin as an actor. So Leslie, your thoughts?
Well, what I would say about all of that is that I'm coming at it from the perspective of a woman who is looking for female representation in front of and behind the camera. And as I'm sure you guys all know, the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative just came out with a new report that talked about how few women are represented in front of the camera, regardless of stereotype. Those that are in front of the camera are sexualized, or have less than 5 words, but it's such a tiny percentage in terms of the lead or co-lead. I don't have the statistics right now, but I want to say it's like 4% or 5%. It's tiny, and so it doesn't even come to the point of stereotype. You have to get in front of the camera. You have to see yourself, as Kevin would say, being a Black American, seeing yourself on screen is really, really important in order for you to recognize that you can do whatever it is that the characters are doing on screen, and also for the rest of society to normalize and accept a fully formed and interesting person that has many dimensions and isn't just a stereotype or one of these 7, which almost universally, I would say, female characters are put into. I think there were 3 characters in the last several years that had family and you knew their relationships. 3 out of all of the movies that came out that were the top 200 films. So I think what we're running into is not just stereotype, we're running into the fact that there are no Asian characters on screen, you know, that the percentage is so tiny that it's a huge problem. I think I wrote some of these down. Let me see. So of the last, since 2007 to 2019, in 1,300 films and 51,000 speaking characters, only 5.9 were Asian. So
Right.
it doesn't even come to the stereotypes. And I think further, when you have so few represented on screen in the first place, it's so much easier to create, to just put them into stereotypes and just wedge them in. This year, we have Kung Fu, which is in all of television history, the first drama that's an hour-long drama that is an Asian cast.
Right.
Ever.
And an Asian female lead.
And an Asian female lead, which was intentional when Christina M. Kim, who is the co-showrunner, took on the idea and created the story and created this reboot.
Right.
She was absolutely adamant that it would be a female lead.
Right.
And then also to have a really interesting diversity of representation, intersectional representation on screen with those characters, because you have her brother is gay, and then he has just started having a relationship with a Black character who is fully formed and has interesting, you know, a sort of multi-dimensional character so far. We haven't seen
Right.
that much of him yet
Right.
because they just started dating, but I love seeing that. And then even further though, when you're talking about characters that have fewer lines, I was struck when I watched one episode where they were in Chinatown and the dad got sick and wound up in the hospital. And here comes the doctor, and the doctor is a woman and Asian. And I thought, well, yeah, of course, it's in Chinatown, the doctor would be Asian. But I spoke to Hannah Lee Culpepper, who was the director of that episode, and she
Right.
said that was an absolute choice, that she wanted it to be a woman. So I think it's really important that we get more populated with Asian characters on TV and on the big screen, so that there's an opportunity to create more fully formed, fleshed out characters on screen. That's
Right.
essential. And, you know, I think that once that starts happening, because it's been mostly lip service, the
Right.
fact that this inclusion report has come out and it has gotten a lot of press, hopefully will actually make a big difference, because they focus on intersectionality, not just on representation. So not,
Very true.
and it's almost impossible to not have a more interesting, more developed character when you make the character intersectional, because
Right.
then you're giving them more dimension right off the bat. So, I mean, I think that's what we need to see in order for things to change.
Agreed. Kevin, your thoughts?
You know, Christian, I apologize. I kind of don't remember the original question.
Well, I mean, just in terms of what your thoughts are about these Asian American stereotypes that you've seen, and what your thoughts are as you see more content coming out. And sometimes these are perpetuated, sometimes they're not. So as Leslie, you know, graciously presented, you know, there are some hopeful changes. I mean, we've got, I'm sure you've been following Shang-Chi, right? And then also Warrior, which is another show that's also produced by Shannon Lee. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting just in thinking about this. When I started to go back and I was like, what was one of the first Asian characters that I saw on screen? And I remember The Last Dragon.
Taimak.
Yeah. And then Ty was the kid, but correct me if I'm wrong, or his last name, but Ernie Reyes Jr., or was it Ernie Reed Jr.? But he was like the little boy in there. And then he went on to do The Last Electric Night, which was a Disney series that maybe no one has ever seen. But the reason I bring that up is because when I was growing up, like one of my best friends was Korean. And so through his eyes, I also noticed how little there was for like, I mean, there was not too many characters that I could like look at on the big screen, but I definitely had more to look at than he did. And we used to watch The Electric Night over and over because Ernie's character was like the main character, the kid. But outside of being, you know, a martial artist or somebody's sidekick, the stereotypes that you named was my introduction to Asians on the big screen. I think now we're starting to get to a place where we're starting to see better representation. I think as film critics, since we actually watch, you know, international film all the time, we understand that some of the best, most beautiful films are coming from Asian countries year after year. But unfortunately, the rest of, you know, America does not see these films, doesn't want to read the subtitles, and thus are missing out on so much. But unfortunately, because of that, you know, these stereotypes are perpetuated. And so, you know, it's amazing just teaching, you know, film appreciation at Nova. You know, when I teach African-American cinema that week, at least, like, you know, we have our stereotypes as well. And so many of them really kind of line up in another way, you know, coon, buck, mulatto, etc. But as I'm looking at these, I'm just like, wow, this really does nail it. And I think that unfortunately, that's what we've seen over the years. And the fact is that media and film is very powerful. And so if that's what we see and that's what we believe, then in our day-to-day life, you know, in our interactions, unless we're actually having good communion with one another, that's what we think a Black person is like, or an Asian person. So hopefully this trend is going to continue where we see more Asian males and Asian females and lead characters in sexy roles, right? Like Crazy Rich Asians, right? And so those are my thoughts.
All right, I'm going to move to Gina and then to Anthony. So Gina, you were,
Yeah,
you know, I
sure.
mentioned Warrior, so I'm just curious what you might, your thoughts.
So I recently finished it. It took me a while. I watched a lot of different things, and but I just finished it up. And what I liked about Warrior too was some of the characters and sexuality. There's the gay, the one of the members of the Hopway who's gay, and then also Atoy who's bisexual. So I thought that's so to me. Whenever I watch something that's so stereotypical and puts us into these
boxes,
really they're top typecasted roles,
right,
it's boring to me. What I want to do is I want to write about film and rave about like the good points of everything that I watch. And when it's something that's just set, it's and I just lose interest. And
right.
So Warrior to me was very like out of the box, and the way it was shot too, when when an Asian person's, when a Chinese person speaking to another Chinese person, it's like perfect English, right? And then when they're speaking to a non-Asian person, then their English is accented. So I just thought like little like nuances like that made the show. And also I mean, yeah, the role of is it Mylin yeah, Dragon Lady. I mean, she is leader of the Long Z.
Right.
Spoiler alert, sorry guys if you haven't seen it. But she's like the El Jefe, right? Of her tongue. And so I haven't seen that in a while. So I'm all about female empowerment. So I'm with you, Leslie, and good work with your panel. And so that's pretty much it on my end.
Okay. Anthony?
It's interesting. I want to make sure though, we're just talking about American film, right?
Yeah.
Because when I look at this list, the first thing that came to mind was Takashi Miike's Fudo.
Mm-hmm.
And in Takashi Miike's film Fudo, every one of those stereotypes was present in that film.
True. We do it to ourselves. I know that.
Right, well, this is the thing. This is really my point about this, because it's really a slippery slope, because now we have it where we have people who market to us what we say we want, right? So if we want more representation, you'll get a gay person, you'll get a bisexual person, and then they'll throw in the sex scene so that you know that's their sexual orientation, and then they'll take the man out and put a woman in, but they'll feed you exactly what you want. It's a catch-22, and they can never cover all bases. It's like watching Get Out. When I saw the black male father, he made so many bad choices that it made me question, why was a black male father being represented that way? It's a very slippery slope. So if we're just talking about American film, completely understandable. Growing up for me, Southeast DC, we had Channel 20. It was Kung Fu movies, and it was Godzilla. That's what we grew up watching. We got a little bit older. We started getting the John Woo movies coming in, Hard Boiled, stuff like that. That's what was coming over. But you got to understand, when those films were coming over, you had Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone. It was a bunch of action movies. So if you're going to bring in something to actually have it up, if it wasn't anime like Akira or Fist of the North Star, things like that, these are the things that we were seeing. So it became what we were paying for, which means what we were getting more of. Now it comes to a point for the person that's viewing to want to veer off and start watching different films like Lust, Caution, or The Handmaiden, or other things like that. But that's the viewer. The people in the companies are going to give people exactly what they say we want, and that's why we have the shift change now.
Right.
But then we have to get into the intricacies of, okay, we're going to give you different stereotypes.
Right.
To make you feel as though you're being represented because we want your money. Right. So I think that when it comes down to these things, we have such a storied history of film where everything that you can pinpoint that's stereotypical, sometimes I can introduce you to somebody that matches that stereotype in real life, and I can introduce you to somebody that's completely the direct reverse of that stereotype.
Right. Because, stereotypes are always of things that are experienced, but not necessarily generalized, and that's what gets us into trouble. We generalize those experiences, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, so the thing is really when it comes down to American film, we have to understand that American film is an industry and a machine.
Plus, it's a business.
It is not about, it's first and foremost a business.
Right.
So whatever we're fed, whatever we eat, we're going to keep getting fed in until we say, no, I don't want that anymore.
Right.
And once like when's the last time you went to the movie theaters to see a Western or a gangster film? Like Martin Scorsese pretty much just put the nail in the coffin of gangster films because it's not a thing anymore. So now you have more films that are showing up with Ali Wong as the lead and Henry Golden as the lead. So these things are changing because we're changing.
Right. Our tastes are changing, because like you said, I feel that, in the 80s and 90s, we were just being fed, like you said, what we were consuming without really thinking about it in a much broader or conscious sense. It was just eat. Right. Same thing with all the action movies, whether it be Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, all those. We just kept being fed that. So there is some, what I would call, I don't want to call it normalcy, but more, we got adjusted to be what was being fed to us. And we just took it as is. And then, like you said, because it's a machine and a business, it's about the dollars, right? They could care less who they casted. In a lot of the films that we've seen over the decades, it's always about, will it drive the box office? Will I get a return for spending 20 million? Will I get 80, 90, 100 million from it? That's what it comes down to.
We're in such an evolution now that with streaming, we're able to have more chances taken.
Right.
So we
agree.
They've also proven now, it's just gonna, if I can say, they have proven without question that inclusion and diversity in film makes money.
Yep.
It's a proven fact. And it's proven across the board in all ethnicities.
Right.
So Latinx, Asian American, Black, gay, every single thing you can think of, it makes more money when it's inclusive.
Because now it's not about being force-fed consumption. We're actually thinking about what we're going to eat. It's not like every day I'm going to eat McDonald's. I want a better variety, right? That's what it comes to. So Kelvin, since you're the actor amongst us, what are your thoughts about a lot of these stereotypes, and how do you see things from an actor's perspective? So let me make sure you're unmuted. You there, Kelvin? Do you hear me? All right,
Hear me
you're
now.
muted now. Go ahead.
Okay. So I started my career in film in 1985. I made a film called The Great Wall is a Great Wall. I went to China. It was the first American film made in the People's Republic of China in 1985, shortly after it was opened. I portrayed an all-American kid, a Chinese American, all-American kid. He plays football on the Great Wall. And he's a, so I started my career really playing something very out of the stereotypical box of what an Asian in America is. And my whole career, 35 years, I've been fighting this fight for more representation and the correct type of representation. The whole reason why I got into this business was to create truthful and authentic representations that I felt that were me, you know, that came from me. And I'm an Asian American. I know that that's a kind of an old terminology now, but I'm part of the generation that created that terminology. And so after I made this film, it was very well received. 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert. And I thought that I would get opportunities to be on television and to do other films, and there were no opportunities for me there. And I instead then did a lot of theater. I went back to theater, and I did a lot of Asian American theater. Those were the only opportunities that I had to do my craft, to be an actor, and to portray Asian Americans. I was at the Asian American Theater Company in San Francisco. I worked with David Henry Wong and Philip Congo-Tanda and Rich Shiomi in some of their earliest works there, and premiered some of their earliest works. And I originated, you know, characters in 3 Philip Congo-Tanda plays. So, you know, that has been central to my artistic life and to my artistic struggle, and to what I'm trying to do as an actor. You know, I didn't work on television for, you know, a good 10 years because
But you've seen the change, though. You've seen,
I have
obviously there was a
seen
lot
the
of
change,
barriers.
and that's
There was a
why
lot
I'm
of
working
barriers.
now. Yes, that's why I'm working now. You know, there was a huge chunk of time in my career where I refused to take roles that I just thought were what you guys are saying, stereotypical, demeaning. You know, when I got into this, I always told myself, you know, I remember how it was when I was a kid and get made fun of at school, and you know, in the schoolyard, and I didn't want to ever do anything
Right.
that would endanger or demean or put at risk, you know, kids at school, or now what we're talking about is our Asian elderly getting jumped in the street, you know, and head stomped, curb stomped, or whatever.
Right.
Okay, you know, epidemically. Okay, so there was a long time when I refused to take those roles, and I didn't work. Okay, so you know, Kelvin Han Yi is not. I'm not a famous guy. There's a reason. Okay, because you know, now if you look at my IMDb, you know, I've got a good string of stuff, but you know, I'm not a star. I'm not famous. Certainly not rich. And so it has been my struggle to
Understood.
you know, to bring truth to our representation. Okay, and me as an artist, I'm the head of the spear. I'm the point of the spear, right? In this work, right?
Right.
So a word, I'd like to say something about about what a stereotype is, because we're throwing this word around, stereotype, yeah, and it feels awful just to say it, right? Right, stereotype, right? So we all kind of know what it is, and what's distasteful about it, okay? But I just like to point this out, that there's a difference between a stereotype and an archetype, yeah, and a type, okay? And so archetypes and types, metaphors, are the tools that we use to tell stories. This is all we have, okay? Okay, so there are different types, there are different archetypes, all right? And so, you know, when you gave those seven stereotypes, okay, I've played many of those types in this business. I've played gangsters. I have played I don't know, I've played wizened older Asian guys.
Right.
But I hope, and I have tried very hard, and I have struggled artistically to not play these types as stereotypes. There's a difference, yeah? So, you know, okay, so a couple of years ago, I had a recur on SWAT, okay, on CBS.
Right.
And okay, and I played an Asian gangster, okay, but I thought he was a little bit elevated, you know. He was suave, debonair,
Right.
not fitting this sort of
Malignant or negative images is what you're saying, because
yeah,
that's what happens a lot of times.
Oh my God, Power was like that.
Right, and you know, and also, you know, for a lot of my characters, I just try to give them some masculinity, because that is what has been missing for almost all of the Asian male types,
Right.
in the, you know, in the history of film and television.
Right.
Bruce Lee was the first guy that came on there that had, what do the kids say now? Big dick energy, right?
Okay.
Right.
We're all adults
kids
here.
say it
We're
too.
all adults here.
That is the
I'm
first time
sorry,
I've heard
but the
this.
kids say that.
But I just, sorry to interrupt you,
I heard
Kevin,
the
but
kids
it's
say
really,
that.
it's really about being empowered. You know, a lot of times these characters,
you know, well,
characters are not empowered. You know,
well, the
they
big
are
dick energy
demeaned,
is a
or they
metaphor.
are put down. You know, so
Yes. Okay. So you know what I'm saying. So I'd like to close by just saying that recently, so I'm not famous. I don't get a lot of lead roles. Okay, I'm often a guest star.
Right.
I'm on a lot of different TV shows for a few scenes, right? One episode or 2 episodes or 3 episodes.
Right.
Okay. So in the last 3-4 years, I would like to say that 80% or more of my characters are not characters that were originally written as or conceived to be AAPI or somebody that looks like me. Okay, so the way that we've accomplished this is that I'm my manager, Chris Lee at Authentic. He is an Asian American brother, and he absolutely has a militant sort of social political bent to what he's got. An Asian wing there at Authentic Literary and Talent Management, and we're trying to mix things up. We're trying to get in, okay? And the way that we're doing that is that we're throwing ourselves out there for, we're going for characters that, if you look at my IMDb, in the last 3-4 years, most of my characters do not have Asian last names. Why? They weren't written as I went in there and I got the part because I don't know. I competed and I got it.
Again, I think there's definitely a shift. I'm not super close to Ken Leung, but Ken Leung is also another actor who I've talked to him. Same thing. He has tried to avoid a lot of these 7G stereotypes that are out there.
Right. So what I'm saying is that I think that I am making huge strides right now in representation and diversity especially on television. We're in a golden age of television right now, and you know, the streaming services make less. The dollar bottom line is a little bit less important. Of course, it is important, but
no, but the mechanisms behind it have shifted.
Yeah.
The mechanisms
they
behind
have
it.
shifted, and people are going for quality. People are going for artistic integrity. They're taking more chances, like
Ken.
you said.
You can be more niche now.
Right. You can be you can definitely be more niche.
Yeah, you can go directly for people who want to see a particular thing. You can produce it for low cost and have it go directly to their homes. So you don't have to gamble as much. Which gives us a chance to really work with great
and that gives
stereotypes
us an opportunity to tell our own stories and to have our own voice. But I think that I am making strides in the mainstream, middle of the road, network television world that a huge part of the population, a majority of the population is watching on their screens at home, okay? And that I am showing up as an American, he's this Asian guy, but he's a first responder. He's the fire chief, or he's the and he doesn't fit into that stereotype at all. He's a father. He's your neighbor. He's your neighbor. Okay, and it normalizes us in this country. It makes us part of the fabric, of this country, and so I think that that's very, very valuable. As much as it is valuable for us to be telling our own stories, to be telling Asian stories and Asian American stories. Absolutely.
Very true. And that's
right.
and that's why, just so you guys know, because I want to be conscious of our time. So let's try to keep our responses a little shorter. But Daniel Day Kim yesterday, I was in a thing with him yesterday, and this is why he's creating his own sort of almost to the same point as Tyler Perry, creating his own studio, creating, you know, the capability of telling those stories, you know. So I think that those are the right steps in the right direction. I know both Leslie and Gina have to log off here in the next 5 minutes. I wanted to give each of you an opportunity before we start getting into deeper these G stereotypes. Is there anything else that you would like to share? And thank you, Leslie, for that PDF. I did not know that existed. I am so glad you sent that to me. I'm very much going to share that with a bunch of people that I know, but I wanted to give both Gina and Leslie a chance to say anything else before they have to head out. And we're still going to continue. We've got another hour, but as you know, we can never fit everything in such a limited time capacity. So I'll start with Gina, if there's anything else that you want to say as you bow out, and then we'll Leslie.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to leave soon, but this has been a fascinating conversation. One that I forgot to mention, I also chair the Smithsonian's Asian Pacific American, we call ourselves SAPA, Asian Pacific American Alliance. And we're it's an internal affinity group, but I'll definitely bring up this discussion topic because we talk about all sorts of different things, ranging from pop culture to current events, to cultural intersectionality, even our own DEAI issues. But I guess I've seen all of these stereotypes, and like I said, whenever I see movies or TV shows that have like those typecasted roles, I think I even mentioned Power, where at a certain point, Tommy and what's the Cuban guy, Julio, get into business with the Korean mob, and it's just like it's so cringy because it's just like the script is so bad. Like, why can y'all like have hired me to write this all out? But anyhow, but this has been great, and thank you for all of your input. And Kelvin, you may have done a lot on IMDb, but it's a lot of stuff that I've seen, like Glow. I love Glow, and Westworld, all the shows that I love. I couldn't get into Bosch, so I'm gonna be honest with you. Bosch, my cousin loves it, but I just couldn't get into it. So
All right, thank you, Gina.
all right.
Appreciate you
Bye,
being
Gina.
here. Leslie, did you have any final thoughts before you have to head out? I know you've got to get to your other meeting.
I was just going to say, I think one of the most important ways of changing the stereotypes and moving forward and making things more inclusive on the big screen and the small screen is amplification. And there's something going on now where, you know, with Crazy Rich Asians, they did this gold open thing where they wanted to have as many people supporting the opening weekend as they could possibly find. And so there was this call put out around social media, and a bunch of people bought out movie theaters. Well, now In the Heights is coming out in June,
Right.
and there's a new connection between Gold Open and NALIP, which is the national, I don't remember exactly what it's Latinx producers organization, a nonprofit, and getting them together and supporting and promoting and amplifying In the Heights. And I think when you get different groups of people who have all felt, you know, whether it's African-American or Black folk in the US, or LGBT, or Asian or Latinx, all have the same problem, all have had historically the same problem with representation, stereotypes, and being intersectionally represented on screen, to always help amplify every other group that you can find out there that is having the same problem, so that together we can actually make a difference. And so if anybody is on social media and they're follow the people who follow the organizations that are supportive of intersectional representation, and who are supporting amplification of all different voices. And then when you see something like the Gold Open, amplify it, talk about it, support, and go see these films on opening weekend. Because if we don't go see films that have a wider diversity and a more fully formed and more dimensionality in their characterizations, if you don't support them, they don't show up. The money has to be where people see the success. And if you can support those films and those TV shows by amplifying them, you're making a difference. And every single person who's watching anything on screen, whether it's the big screen or the small screen, makes a difference. Every single one of them. So that's what I would end my being here with saying. And I appreciate Christian, you having me. And it was great talking to all of you guys that were here. And I really enjoyed listening to everybody else's thoughts. And we just have to, I'm going, but I just want to say we just have to try to do as much as we can to make the difference. And hopefully eventually, I mean, it's happening. It is happening. So I have hope, but I'm a white girl. So, I already see myself.
But we're all in this together. We're all in this together.
Exactly. Well, it was great talking to you guys. Have a great rest of your chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Take care. All right. So before we get into some more discussion, I just wanted to show you guys, I compiled some of these videos. So we'll start with the gook. This is obviously a over exaggeration. It's also whitewashing because they're not even using an Asian character, an actual Asian actor. So you guys may have seen this before, but let's watch this for a second.
Mr. Go right way. Someday, Mr. Go right way. What happened to you anyway? You take off for the powder room, and that's the last I see you.
Now, really, Harry?
Harry was the other guy. I'm Sid Arbuck. You like me, remember? Mr. Go right way. I protest.
Oh, darling, I am sorry, but I lost my key.
But that was 2 weeks ago. You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
But it won't do any good. I just lose them all.
Come on, baby. You like me. You know you do.
I worship you, Mr. Arbuck, but good night, Mr.
Well,
Arbuck.
baby, wait a minute. What is this? You like me. I'm a liked guy. You like me, baby. You know you do. In 30 seconds, I got to call the police. All the time a disturbance. I cannot sleep. I got to get to my rest.
So you guys know this is 1961. It was Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Mickey Rooney, playing a Japanese American character. And yeah, Freedom, I know it's cringy on so many levels, but that was what was accepted because Asian American actors were not being utilized, at least in 1960. I mean, there was actually several Asian American actors that were utilized for the earlier part of Hollywood, but things started to change as political and as Hollywood mechanics or machines, as Anthony pointed out, started to change things. The next one you're going to see is Long Duck Dong.
What's happening, hot stuff?
His name is Long Duck Dong.
Very clever dinner. Appetizing food fitting neatly into interesting round pie.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you for loaning me the donger.
He's really bitching.
So that movie was, if you guys remember, 16 Candles in the 1980s. Long Duck Dong, not just the naming convention, but also his character. There was a little bit of redemption, not much. He did get cooler. He did end up with one of the white girls in the movie, but again, over stereotypification of a nerd or a geek. Then you've got the Guru.
Who? Guru Tagan Mapuda. You are so good with nunchucks, yet you are blind.
I am not blind. I am just severely cross-eyed. I know. It is weird. Be seated.
Now, obviously, for comedic effect, and they didn't use, again, whitewashing. They used a non-South Asian character for this particular film. Again, it was all about parody, comedy, making the dollars for this particular film. Now, you guys remember this possibly. This is from Gran Torino and the gangsters. This is not your mafia type of gangsters. These are local gangsters in a community.
Girl, man, I can't tell. Hey, Chinito, hey, if you was in the pen, I'd be fucking you with the ass, you'd be my bitch. When you see the jackass in the right stock, yeah, that's right. Keep walking. Keep walking. Hey, look at me when I talk to you, homie. Fucking slows, man. Everywhere you look, man. Fucking sucks everywhere you go, man. Go back to your rice patty. What you looking at, man? That's my little cousin over there.
Sure that's your cousin, man?
Fuck yeah, that's my little cousin.
You tight with anybody?
No, he fly solo, man.
Fly solo?
Wanna do something?
Man, let's go down and see what the fuck they doing over there.
Yo, what's up? They fucking with you. They fucking with you. What's up? Fuck you, homie. What you got? What you got? Hey, we can do this right now. You go fucking back to your country. Fuck yeah. She don't come in here. Let's fucking rise, nigga. Fucking. Aren't you supposed to get some Chinese food, huh? What the fuck is this? Hey, this is all about now. How many bodies you got? How many bodies you got?
May I present her, Kazumi Ito. She came
This
to visit
is
me
the
today,
Geisha.
and she was kind enough
This
to
is a much
offer
older film.
to act as my
It's
hostess.
called My Geisha.
How do you do?
Shirley MacLaine.
How do you do?
Thank you.
Sure. Like this.
Oh, Mr. Kaida, what's the purpose of all this work and preparation? What does this remarkable girl do?
She performs a service which is peculiarly Japanese. We conduct our business and social life only in the tea house, never in our home. She entertains for us. In America, you combine the functions of childbearing and entertaining in one woman. I do not deny it is more efficient, and it is possibly our way in the future.
Take those binoculars,
Next
pick any
is
player
Gambler.
on or off the field, and I will guess the number.
Any play. That's like 100 to 1.
It's good odds for you. 2 million.
That's fucking crazy. Oh, I don't like it.
Okay. I'll sweeten it for you. You pick the player, and she'll guess the number.
What? You're fucking crazy. But I can't turn down free money. You got a bit.
So again, sweetening the pot, really playing to the allure of gambling, right? And then of course, this is the one that I added, the guard.
Many people
the
have tried to involve themselves
person
in my
who is
affairs.
the henchman, but also elevated, or someone who is never the main character, but a protector.
Remarkable. But what does the club secretary have to say? Oh, nothing, Mr. Vaughn. I own the club.
And then for this last one, there's a combination of Asian American stereotypes that are put into one character. This is a much newer film. You guys will probably all remember this. But again, it really just cements various different characters. Now, mind you, these are just, the examples that I was able to find. There's tons out there, but you'll know this one.
I want my purse back, assholes.
That's not a purse, it's a satchel!
It's a purse, okay? And you steal from wrong guy.
Wait, that doesn't sound like us.
Mine had $80,000 inside. And this one, nothing.
Hey, there's Skittles in there!
Don't let the beard fool you. He's a child.
It's funny because he's fat.
This was obviously a very simple misunderstanding. Alan picked up the wrong purse. It's no big deal.
Hey, if it's a no big deal, why when I come after you guys, he starts screaming like crazy and throw me in trunk? Huh?
Lucky charm. Oh, it's just funny. You know what?
Fuck you.
What do you want?
Not so good now. Quid pro quo. Do us your bag.
What?
Bring money to Big Rock in Mojave Desert at dawn.
What?
Toodaloo, motherfucker.
Hey,
Police take. Funny fat guy fall on face.
I'm sorry. First of all, good morning. We didn't catch your name last night.
Mr. Chow. Leslie Chow.
Mr. Chow. That's cool.
Of course, Stu. That is cool.
So we've gone through all 7 with the culmination of one scene here that really just was the epitome of all those stereotypes rolled into one. So my next question to the remaining panelists, starting with Kevin, and then we'll go to Anthony, and then we'll go to Kelvin. As you've seen, I guess, the transition from the early 60s to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now we're in the 21st century, there's been some progress, but yet we still have a long way to go. I know that you guys have also seen this happen in other films, when I mean films, meaning in the African-American films, as Leslie pointed out, in films of Latin descent, So what are your thoughts? Do you feel that we are still progressing, or are there still many barriers and challenges to these stereotypes? So Kevin, take it away.
Yeah, I think just overall, I think we're progressing, but it's really slow. Even with this last stereotype, I think one of the things that you'll really see, especially in Black cinema, is now we're reaching this point of identity and choosing how we identify our spectrum, right? And so, there's a spectrum of different types of Asian people. It's just human beings, right? And I think, unfortunately, at least, as we're kind of discussing, TV seems to be where it's at, where we can kind of see a little bit more of these different identities of who or what an Asian person would look like. And I think in that last example, I feel like he was playing to, as you said, the stereotypes, but also in many ways kind of manhandling it to make it his own, if that makes sense. And so as over the top as it was, I think in many ways it was a way to say, hey, like, I'm going to make this character the way that I want to express it, stereotype as it may be. And so just to kind of answer your question, I think that in the past, as we've seen these different films, and the Black community, Get Out, Us, and those are more the Jordan Peele types. But even shows like Atlanta, right? We're starting to see where we can see Black people in a artsy fartsy type of way. In many ways, like you would say, that just giving them the opportunity to go crazy, right? And I think that's what we need to see more, just in general, and especially with Asians being portrayed in film, right? And we talk about, how many times like Asians aren't seen as like, or at least Asian male, they aren't seen as a sexy, male lead, right? But we're starting to see that a little bit more now. But having the opportunity to be something other than those stereotypes is really important, because as I was looking at these, I was thinking, man, are there any white stereotypes? And I was like, except for maybe Manic Pixie Dream Girl, you really don't have any, because there's been opportunity to play the hero, to play the loser, to play all of these different types of people that represent the human race. So I think that just having those opportunities to get wild, to get crazy, and play these different characters in the spectrum is really important. I think we're getting there, but we're far away from where we need to be.
Thank you, Kevin. Anthony, thoughts as you saw a lot of these scenes?
I saw all the movies actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen them as well.
Yeah. And this is, and I don't want to dampen anything when I say this, but film has a duality to it. The same year that Breakfast at Tiffany's came out, Bridge to the Sun came out, which was a love story with a white woman who fell in love with a Japanese man. The next year, you had A Girl Named Tomiko, where a Japanese Russian person was in the military, and that was a drama, and a war drama, and a love story. And you go to the 80s when you had films like 16 Candles. You also had The Killing Fields, and you also had the work John Carpenter did with Big Trouble in Little China, and then he came back and did stuff like Prince of Darkness, where you saw the Asian scientist working, in this horror film.
Right.
It's duality to it. So the thing is where do we put that energy? If we're sharing the offensive, but not simultaneously sharing the stuff that gravitates to a wider view of what art can do, then we're going to keep feeding the wrong wolf.
Right.
The bottom line is, across the spectrum of all films, there is duality. And sadly, some of the worst things get to become the classics, get to become the bigger budgeted ones that get to go. But for people who really watch movies and love movies, they know that for every Action Jackson, there's a Charles Burnett film like The Sleep with Anger out there. So I don't think that is changing. It's evolving because now we have more of a niche way of seeing films, which means that they can make things to gear towards specific audiences so that we can get exactly what we want or exactly what we say we want. But there's still always going to be another Fast and the Furious. At the same time, you have another Minari. That's just what it is. That's what film is. It's just art. It's subjective. They splatter on the wall in one sense, and in the other sense, they're contemplative and they think about it, right, and they see who's going to buy what. I really, it's weird because watching the scene from Gran Torino, not only do you have the stereotype of the Asian gang, you have the stereotype of the Latino gang. And I remember going to the movies to see American Me, and then watching the old penitentiary films, and then watching Carandiru, the Brazilian prison movie. The thing is that when you watch films as a person yourself, you can find something relatable. And everything, I've known guys who would put a gun to the back of your head, just like I knew a guy who would open up a book and read it. Everybody does exist. So it's really up to us as what we think is actually entertaining, what we would actually put it into. And we do a lot of forgetting the past. If we go back to 1961, let's not bring up Breakfast at Tiffany's. Let's bring up The Bridge to the Sun. Let's not bring up the black person playing the pimp or the black woman being a prostitute. Let's take another look at movies like oh, help me out, Kevin. What was the movie with she just
Guess Who's Coming
passed
to Dinner?
that had James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones was in it, and Claudine.
Well, I was also going to say like
Claudine, where you see a woman dealing with the social system and trying to raise her kids and trying to date again. And the thing is that these films are out there because humans, we all have duality to us. We all have good and bad to us.
Well, I was going to say Sidney Poitier, you know, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Those type of that was a totally different perspective. And
right, but the thing is that we have a generation now that does not pay attention to the Sidney Poitier movie.
Well, because we're such a ADD generation. We consume things
Matter of fact,
in short bites. You know,
there's a film called A Better Tomorrow. I think it's called A Better Tomorrow.
Better Luck Tomorrow?
Sidney Poitier. It's not the Asian one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Not the one from my John Woo days, because we can get into that. But it's a movie with Sidney Poitier and it's this other guy, white guy, and they have to team up to do a heist. And there's a gay henchman in this black and white 60s movie. And you bring this up, most people will put it like this. I was a straight man in the movie theater just watching Brokeback Mountain by myself because nobody else would want to go. You see what I'm saying? Nobody was on the road with me to go see Noah's Ark the night it came out. But the thing is that if you're really into film, then you got to make sure that people understand these other things exist. Because it's
spectrum.
To just see, I mean, and you're talking about stereotypes. I always ask, why do white men keep playing racist in movies? If you're not racist, you actually gonna go on set and act like you whipping black people? Like, at what point do you say you're not going to take that kind of role because that goes against the culture of who I am and who we've come to be? So we got to question this universally, because that's the only way that we can get better Asian American films, better African American films, better Latino films, is if we make it relatable across the boards. Sadly, some of these things are a part of who we are. It's just not all of who we are.
Right.
You know, people gamble. You know what I mean?
Right. It's not just Asians. You're right.
I could take you to the casino with my mother, and she probably played a role just like the dude did that you just showed from the Will Smith movie. You see what? So it's really about this. This is really about, now we have a chance to have niche films given to us directly for what we want, and we can feed into that. So as consumers, what are we collectively going to feed into to make sure this goes the right way going forward?
Right.
Because the people who was driving it at first are not on the wheel anymore.
Right, because things have changed. It's about, and I think both Kevin and Leslie and you, it's about representation. You know, making sure we have representation, not just in front of the camera, but also those who are behind the camera, the producers, the directors, the screenwriters. That's where it needs to start evolving. I just want to point out two things that you reminded me of two movies. One was Map of the Human Heart with Jason Scott Lee, who ends up, it's a love story between, he's the main character, and a white French woman. And there's so many people that have never heard of it, never seen it, right? Another one, you've got, you talked about Better Tomorrow, but Better Luck Tomorrow, which was pretty much an all Asian cast. It was actually, was it Justin Lin's first film that he self-financed? He maxed out all his credit cards to pay for that film and make it a reality. And I use that film to teach, Asian American studies all the time. So there are definitely, you're right, there's a wider spectrum, but not everybody understands that spectrum. They're only seeing this much. Right?
I think that's the thing that gets us all hung up. I was thinking about Snow Falling on Cedars too.
Right,
but I think
that's a great movie.
That really gets us hung up because, I can go back and be mad as hell about the Black exploitation area.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can be mad as hell, but I like that shit. Like, some of it is good. Like, I enjoy it, but I can still go off and watch something cerebral. I can watch something that gives me more than, you know, more of what I'm more like. I can get into the fantasy of what that world might be and then come back to it. So I
But
really
there's a
think that-
danger to that though. And the danger is, and this is why, and this is a total for another conversation. The danger is that what they see in film and video, right, film and movies, especially older generation, is why we have these issues of clash between races. And I'll be the first to admit, my mother, you know, and I've dated an African American girl, but she had a very racist perspective because she saw movies like Boys in the Hood, right? South Central. I mean, these things that she had a perception that African Americans were one way. And that's the problem. They're not being broad enough in regards to what and as you said, it's subjective art, but they're not looking at it as art. They're looking at, oh, so these are the stereotypes that are perpetuated, and this is my thinking of African Americans or Asian Americans or Hispanic Americans. And that's where the danger comes, right? We've seen this. So I totally agree with you. I think you pointed out some excellent, you know, thoughts about that. And I want to be mindful of time. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Anthony? I'm sorry.
Just show your mother. You should have shown your mother some different movies.
Oh no, she's gotten better since then. Trust me. This was back in the because I was going to Penn State and I was dating an African American girl and she was not going to have it. She just was not going to have it.
But you know what? But that's the thing about evolution. That an older generation might frown because they were more in a box than we are.
Right.
This generation now has access to everything in their pocket.
Right.
So now we can have more conversations now. So now is the time to put in front of people those different perspectives. You know, Night of the Demons.
Right.
If you ever seen Night of the Demons, the black dude lived. Okay. The black dude lived. Every time somebody says black people always die first in movies, what about Night of the Demons? What about John Carpenter's The Thing?
Right, The Thing.
You know what I'm saying? So it's always some duality to it. There's always something there if you really pay attention to watch. And I think that's what we have to do as people who really want to make a change. Then we need to change the conversation to understand that there is more out there and that we need to actively pursue that so that people coming up don't just have that same point of view and then everybody's trying to beat the same drum and then just give us a bunch of more stereotypes.
No, you're right. And Kevin makes a great point that the masses need to open their cinematic palette. They haven't eaten everything that's out there. If you don't know about Nigerian food, you're never gonna know. Or if you don't know about Korean barbecue, or you know, what is it, Japanese, what is it, omakase. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that they don't know. So, Kelvin, sorry to make you wait, but I wanted to get your perspective as well. Do you think things have evolved? You know, you were mentioning earlier that, you know, you have been very prideful and very specific on the type of roles that you take or accept. Do you also think that the industry has changed since, you know, since 1986 or 85 that you started? You're muted. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I think that there has been some change in the industry. I think that casting directors, for instance, so there has been change in this industry. There are more Asian American creatives, okay? There are more creators coming from our community, writing behind the scenes, as well as actors, performers, okay? So there's more of us out there creating, giving us a voice. And I think that there's a change in the audience as well as consumers, okay? So I think that more of our audience now is woke, as the kids say, right? I heard the kids say this. And so the audience is a little bit more woke, and the audience does not accept certain stereotypes that we think are cringy now. We don't accept that anymore. So there has been change. And for me in my business, this is just a very concrete thing. Casting directors in Hollywood now cannot keep me out of their office. If I ask to, we found a casting for a character on All Rise, and they described him as a guy that looks like Colonel Sanders. Okay, so we asked to audition for that, and because of because people don't want to be racist, casting directors will not keep me out of their office. They have to say, yes, you can come in and audition for this. And so I come in and audition for this, and I actually booked that role. And I played him with a Southern accent, right? So this guy is like Colonel Sanders. And he's a gambler. He's a judge who is in a casino. So there is somewhat, I guess there is, so he's I mean, it's a guy with an Asian face, and he's gambling, but he's really a judge off hours at the casino. And okay, so what I'm saying is, yes, there is change. I think that we need to put energy into creating our own voice and our own stories. And we also need to put in energy into ourselves as the audience and as consumers of art. And so, you know, what we don't like, we don't have to buy into. What we do like, we should support. And gold openings, you know, and we should support these things, and so and really support. You know, I'm going to leave pretty soon, but for instance, okay, you were talking about Kung Fu, and how you know it's coming from Asian American female perspective, and also from business. It's the showrunner, the producer, Christina, is Asian American. So I'm going to be on the next episode. Okay, so this coming Wednesday, you'll see me on that. You know, so she's trying to. Now, a lot of people don't like the show, but you know, that's a matter of taste. I think a lot of people. I don't. You know, I don't know. A lot of people. Some Asian Americans don't like it. But I gotta say that I appreciate them taking a social. They're dealing with things like LGBTQ representation. They dealt with Black Lives Matter. They dealt with anti-Asian hate and violence within the last couple of episodes. So, you know, so there is an example of something, our voice, our own voice, coming out of our community and talking about issues that are specific to our community and that are truthful and are authentic. So that's what I have to say about that. Look for me next week on. It drops on Wednesday. The next Kung Fu episode, and you know, I don't know. Try to support Kung Fu. You might not like it, but it's kind of about all the right things, and so you know, try to support it. Try to like it. You know, if you see things that are offensive to you, don't support those things. You know, as a consumer, and fight for our voice. Fight for our voice.
Thanks, Kelvin. I totally agree. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your person.
Thank you so much for having me. Great discussion. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. I think my next question, because we're now at the 8:35 mark, and I want to leave some time for Q&A with some of our esteemed guests here. But Kelvin pointed out, yes, it's about our voices. Yes, I think I mentioned this earlier that we need to be writing these stories. I want more, not just the Minaris, obviously, but there needs to be other stories that can be just as exciting and hard-hitting. I do have a question because we have such a diverse group here, especially with Kevin and Anthony. What do you think about when we change things to the point of tearing the original ideas and characters that existed? And I'm gonna point out one. There was DC decided to create a Chinese Superman. Now they're talking about creating a Black Superman, right? Why not focus on the characters that already exist in the DC universe that are Black, breaking these foundational characters down? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Same thing goes with Asian characters. There was a lot of hate towards Iron Fist when the original source material is a white character, but they're like, you missed an opportunity to cast him as an Asian American. Or here's another one recently I read, the wise one from Doctor Strange, right? It was a white female. And now Kevin Feige is backtracking and saying, backpedaling, saying, oh yeah, I should have casted an Asian American. So again, remember, a lot of these decisions, especially when it comes to whitewashing, and I've had a hard time sort of having a discussion with my Hollywood friends, that a lot of times these decisions are not racist decisions, they are economical decisions. To have Scarlett Johansson be Ghost in the Shell, or to have, again, there's other examples, they're not coming off the top, but these might be economic decisions, not necessarily racial decisions. So I want to go, Anthony, I think you're biting at the bit, so go ahead, I'll let you talk first and then go to Kevin.
I'll say this. It's not a problem when a Black actor gets the job, and that's the problem. If we're going to be this way about it, then it needs to be equal and fair across the board. In Thor, Heimdall's character, played by Idris Elba, is not a Black man in the comic books. Also, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character in Doctor Strange is not a Black man. You can argue back and forth about Nick Fury, whether he should be Black or white. But if it's a Black person getting the role, nobody has anything to say. And in the same exact movie, they'll have an issue about the sex change or anything, or the ethnicity of a different character. And this is why this is a problem. First of all, they're fictional characters, okay? They're fictional characters. When Michael B. Jordan played the Human Torch in Fantastic Four, did you hear any uproar? And if you did hear uproar from white people, what was you going to say? They're just racist, right? So let's humanize this, okay? Have you ever really looked at Ghost in the Shell, the anime? The character didn't look Asian. It was a synthetic robot made to look a certain way to be an assassin. Why are we having an argument about this? It's ridiculous. It's like we're looking to have a struggle instead of paying attention to real struggles. Like, why are we complaining about this? And then we had the last election to a TV star. Like, what are we really paying attention to? Like, what are we putting that energy into? You see what I'm saying? So I don't care. They're all made up. And if you're going to make one and then you're going to reboot it to a different race, I don't care. I don't care that Chris Evans played the Human Torch. I don't care that Michael B. Jordan played the Human Torch. What I care about is if the movie is good. If the movie is good, I'll watch it again. If it's not good, I'll be like, shit, I wasted my money on that dumbass movie. That's the end of it. Period. That's the end of it. And we cannot sit here and say, this race can do it, this race cannot. We want equality. It's ridiculous.
Here. No, I've had
But
that
that's all I
same
got to
argument.
say.
I've had that same argument with my friends. I mean, it really doesn't matter in terms of the casting, but remember, most of these casting decisions are not based off of the racist, propensity that they're claiming. 99% of the time, it's because they want to make sure that they get butts in the seats and they make money. And let's face it, sometimes those decisions have been bad and they don't make money, right? But at the end of the day, it's about making money.
You know what? I love Tokyo Tribe. I love the movie Tokyo Tribe. But you know what? In the anime or the cartoon, the drawings of Tokyo Tribe, all the characters are black. In the movie Tokyo Tribe, there was not one brother in sight.
That's right.
All right? Period. It happens.
Right.
Get over it.
Good call. Kevin, do you concur? Do you have other thoughts? It's okay. This is all discussion. So
yeah. Anthony said it passionately and eloquently, and I think he hit the nail on the head. So I don't really have much more to add other than the fact that, you know, when I go to a film, I either want to forget it, that I got student loans that are still due how many years later, or I want to learn something more about myself. And so I really do not, as Anthony said, really care who plays the role. It's just about the entertainment for me. And it's just about, just losing myself and also finding myself in the cinema and in the theater. And so, unfortunately, I think that our history in America has been black and white, and it's this struggle of slavery and black and white, but then yet, you know, the struggle of Asian Americans or indigenous people, is kicked to the back burner. And so that's why, as Anthony is saying so many times with these characters, okay, if it's a black character, you know, it's not that much of a fuss, but anybody else, then it becomes such a big deal. And I think we really kind of got to get over ourselves. We got to get over our history and just keep moving forward. I do think sometimes, let that specific person tell that specific story, but I don't think all the time it has to be that way. Let other people tell the stories as well, because sometimes they might be better equipped to do it.
Right. I mean, as Anthony pointed out, these are not documentaries. These are narratives. These are fictional stories. If it was a documentary, that's a totally different ballgame. As you guys have, I'm sure many of you seen documentaries, but if we're trying to change the story or being too immersed in that documentary story to make things different. But for narrative film, it's really about what the writer and again, there's always going to be clashes between what the writer has and what the director wants. I mean, here's a perfect example, The Last Airbender, right? What the original writers wanted versus what M. Night Shyamalan did, okay? Again, we don't need to go there, but understand, directorial decisions and creative decisions are made at the production line, and that happens sometimes. So in any event, I totally agree with both of you, and I think a lot of times I get flack, especially in the Asian Pacific American world, where they're complaining, they're whining about it, but not realizing the fact that it is either about the money or it's about, hey, it's a fictional story. If I want to cast it that way, if I'm the person in charge, I'm going to cast it that way, right? Sometimes it's unfortunate. There could have been better decisions, but again, at the end of the day, there's one person who has that, what we call executive control or power, that says, this is what I want to do. And they do it, regardless of the social consequences. Go ahead, Anthony, you were going to say?
It's really different for me because I came from a time where this wasn't a conversation.
Right.
My Saturday mornings was Hulk Hogan and we watching stuff like Shirt Tails and the Munchichis. We had a lot of animals talking to us.
We're in the same age group, brother.
We didn't have to have these conversations. When I went to the movies, it was Bruce Willis, and sometimes it was Carl Weathers, maybe. And then if you wanted to get black, you had a new Spike Lee movie that came out every once in a while before John Singleton and then wrote in as I got older. But the thing is this: I'm still black. I still know who I am. I'm still able to seek out films from all over the world. I can watch Michael Haneke films. I can watch Marinere films. I can watch any movies and find something of myself in them. Now, I don't know if what we need is to have somebody say, hey, look at me, I'm Black like you, we can do this. And then that gives me a sense of purpose. I don't know, because I'm not from a generation that had it. So I think I'm okay. I might not be okay, but I think I am. So it's really interesting that when we get into the idea of stereotypes and representation, and there are some people who fall into it, and then there are a lot of people who don't. And I think it's really important for us to be able to work with people on a personable level and not really and show them the variations of entertainment, instead of saying this is the one thing you're going to get and we're banking on this to formulate you to being who you are. I think it's a slippery slope. And when we get into film and who can take a role and what kind of role it is and what kind of role you play, we have to remember that it's subjectivity, that it is art. It's just like going into an art museum. There's nobody going into an art museum saying, okay, I see all these white women on the wall. When they're going to put brothers on the wall? What movie is that from, Kevin?
Spike Lee. I love it.
Like when I go to the National Museum, and to the museums and stuff, I'm not thinking about race. I'm thinking about the picture and the characters. And if I want to go home and draw, or if I want to go to the gallery and buy art, I buy what I like.
Right.
But I think it's about the appreciation of the art. So it's kind of like, it's weird, because I'm not of the ilk of being in this time right now where, because I saw fried green tomatoes in the movie. I've seen these things. I know they exist. I don't have a connection with the argument for representation.
I agree.
I want to jump in. Can I jump in, Christian?
Go ahead.
So I think that the thing is, Anthony is a self-aware unicorn, right? Like he knows film. He can list off films. He knows the history. But I don't think that so many, like when we think about the masses, I don't think they have the depth of knowledge that you have, Anthony, and that self-awareness, right, of who they are. So the thing that I wanted to ask for you, Christian, especially, just having a niche film festival. I know for DC Black Film Festival, there's something that I learn about myself through the niche stories that are told each year. And I'm wondering if that's the same thing for you with DCAPA, Christian. But studies have been shown that when you see yourself on the big screen, it I don't know what it is. It's this magical thing where it unlocks you to feel like you can actually do. And so you could get into the Gina Davis study, and it was Brave and the Hunger Games that came out in 2012, and then girls archery went up the next year. And it's something about seeing ourselves, then suddenly it unlocks the mentality that oh, I can do that. Oh, I can be that. And so I do understand the fight to see certain people play certain roles and to open that up. But that's the one thing that I will interject. I do agree with most of what Anthony has been saying, but for some reason, I think that, if everybody was a alpha or whatever, then like you wouldn't have anybody that does the work, right? The grunt work. Like if everybody's leading, then nothing gets done, right? So you have to have these different levels of people and their self-awareness. And I think, unfortunately, we do need those movies. But Christian, do you see that same thing with DCA?
No, I do, absolutely. Because you got to remember, well, you may not know this, and Anthony may not know this, but when I first came to this country, I wasn't surrounded by other Asians, all right? I came to Ames, Iowa, and my father, and I have a lot of resonance with Minari, because my father came to Ames, Iowa, not from farming, but to go to the only white school in Ames, Iowa, which was Iowa State University. He was the first Asian guy and this is the 1970s, right? And so I can relate to everything that happened in Minari in terms of everybody looking at us like, who the heck are you guys? Never saw Asians before. And when we moved from there to Roanoke, Virginia, again, I was the only Asian in the room, but my two best friends, one was white, a white guy named Duke who drove a truck, had a gun rack and a Confederate flag in the back. And then my other best friend was D. Hewson, who was African-American, and we loved breakdancing. We loved going to the skating rink, all this. So I never knew my Asian identity. So to answer your question, the first time I ever saw an Asian American other than Bruce Lee and and I don't know if you remember this, Anthony, but we had Kung Fu Theater on USA Network back in the day. That's what I would always watch. And so those were the only Asians I would see. And then obviously, coming from a Korean background, my father's like, oh, you got to become a Taekwondo, you're going to take Taekwondo. And so I took Taekwondo. I took martial arts. I've taken every martial art out there, but I'm not a black belt in any of them. Right? So because I'm so ADD in martial arts, that's where I did get to interact with some Asians, very few. But when I saw representation on TV, starting with, besides the Kung Fu movies, the first time I saw it was a TV series. It wasn't called the CW at the time. It wasn't even the WB. I don't know what it was, but it had Russell Wong as the lead character in Vanishing Son. If you don't know that series, look it up. Oh, UPN. Thank you, Kevin. That was right. It was UPN, and he was the main guy, but he never got the girl. He flirted with some characters, but it was never about, it was almost like very Kung Fu-ish, where he was helping to right the wrongs and all that, right? And it was just like, wow. So there can be an Asian American strong lead that speaks perfect English, that doesn't have an accent, right? I mean, my father, the biggest thing, the reason my Korean is so crappy, I mean, I can still speak it, but I can't read and write, is my father said, I do not want you to speak Korean in the house. And I go, why? Because I never want you to be ridiculed or bullied for an accent. Because he dealt with that in Iowa. He dealt with that in the college classes. And it's like, Christian, you are going to speak perfect English. I want you to read newspapers, watch English TV. But then the detriment, and again, you could call it a detriment, is that, hey, I didn't get to embrace my own culture. I mean, I hated being Korean growing up in Roanoke, Virginia, because my mom would pack kimchi as lunch, and people like, ooh, what is that smell? I mean, imagine me hating my own ethnic background. I hated it. But it wasn't until much later and seeing these representations that I started embracing it. So with our festival, there is a dichotomy. And the dichotomy is there are films that are straight from Asia, which have a much more different perspective, versus films that are Asian American, right? Minari has sort of crossed the borders on that with being both Asian and Asian American. We'll see what happens with more films as they come out. There is a Hispanic film coming out. It's called The New Order. And that deals with social classes. And I'm really excited about that film because I think that's going to be the next Parasite.
That's why we're getting it. We're getting it because Parasite did good. And that's why they're going to give us New Order.
So yeah. I'm really excited about it. So again, to answer your question, Kevin, yeah, absolutely. I am thankful for representation, but am I like cheerleading it all the time? No. Right. Because again, what Anthony says, it really goes back to who are the storytellers, who's making, because I love your museum analogy, Anthony. I'll go to a museum and I'm like, oh, I like that. Oh, I hate that. I like that. But that's not from any ethnic or racial background, right? It's just whether I like it or not. And so I think, as Anthony pointed out, we get too embroiled in the divisiveness, in the racial segregation of things. We got to stop. I mean, I was joking with one of my other filmmaker friends. I said, the only way that I think we can actually stand against racism or come together is that we actually need an alien invasion to happen. It reminds me of the movies like Independence Day or what is it, V, the TV show. It will all come together because it's the human race against aliens. Again, this is far-fetched and me exaggerating, but I don't see, the divisions are constantly happening. And we can have another conversation about white mechanisms and white supremacy and all this other stuff. But with film, It's art. At the end of the day, you either like, it's just like food. You mean to tell me you don't like Chinese food, you like Korean food, you don't like, Nigerian food, you don't like, Ethiopian food? I mean, it's whether you like it or not, but you don't need to be vehemently violent or against it, right? If you don't like it, you don't like it, and you move on. You might find something else that you do like, maybe a Chinese fusion or an Ethiopian fusion food. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. All right, guys, I know we only have 6 minutes, so I'd like to open it up. I'm going to stop the screen share since we've already covered all the, but were there any questions from the audience? I think I allowed you guys to unmute yourselves. So I know Freedom or Linda, I know we've lost a couple people because this has gone long, but we're at the last 5 minutes. Elizabeth says, in July, when the Pentagon opens the files about aliens, you may get what you want. Yeah, there's been a lot of releasing of alien footage and this and that, so you never know. Freedom, did you have anything to say? My friend Freedom is here. She works in government, and she is in a diverse racial relationship as well, and she has a lot of other things that she's shared with me. So Freedom, welcome. Did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I have. Though I agree with a lot that's been said here, I also disagree because I feel like people are really looking at things from a very narrow tunnel. And I'm only saying this because of where I was raised. See, I wasn't raised here. I was raised in Europe, the socialist capital of the world and everything, liberal heaven, I guess. But the thing is, it's like, the way we're raised, and I'm also former military, and I'm also a military brat. The way we're raised is we don't look at things from just our perspective. It's not about you. It's not about you. It is about the next generation. And we didn't have necessarily representation. I was saying in the chat, my mom, she pushed Asian culture on me. She pushed it. And Kung Fu Sundays. It was Sundays that we would watch Kung Fu shows every Sunday, even with the screen kind of all choppy sometimes. I was speaking Chinese by the time I was 7 because of that. And she wanted me to see that human beings can play roles regardless of their ethnicity. So I saw the strong man, Asian man. I didn't see the over-sexualized man. I saw the weak woman and the strong Asian woman. I didn't see the, I need to be rescued, let me honor you. I didn't see that as a child because that's how my mom helped me look at other people. We're adults. Everybody's talking about, well, I don't need this. It's not about you. It is about the children behind us that we don't want to have to deal with the shit of, well, when I went to ballet class, they told me that I couldn't do it because of the pigment of my skin or something. No, we want to see an Asian ballerina show. I want to see an Asian ballerina cast in an American film, and I want to see a fucking Asian film that has ballerinas in it. I want to see it all. Because when I do that, I allow my brain to just go in other directions instead of a single path. And no, I don't have to necessarily like the movie, but it should be there as an option. It should be there for representation for children because we all know that representation matters. We're all at a certain age where shit is what it is. We'll have to fight it or we'll have to do something about it. But if we can make the training of a child be a little bit more easy to observe or digest other things, we have to take that chance. And when you talk about these fictional shows, for example, hold on a second. Can you turn that down? I don't have my headset on, but when we talk about fictional shows, what do little kids want to do for Halloween? They want to dress up as their favorite character. I do agree we're taking it too far sometimes because if I want to be, oh man, I just went blank on the Disney character that's the female warrior. Freaking A.
Mulan?
Mulan. If I want my kid to be Mulan, because I've taught my kid everything about Mulan, how she's awesome, how she kicked ass, what she can do. I want her to be able to represent female characters that empower her regardless of race. This whole thing, well, now you're appropriating. Well, is it appropriation if I've educated her on who Mulan is, what she's conquered, how much she's achieved as a woman? Is it really? So the thing is like, kids want to be these fictional characters. They want to go to Comic-Con or whatever. I mean, hell, seniors, I want to do Comic-Con. And if we don't see that stuff in there, what's happening at Comic-Con? People with darker pigment are sunned on at Comic-Con. And don't tell me it doesn't happen because I see these girls cry. So I'm just saying.
I think it comes down to perceptions, you know?
Exactly.
And we have, you know, I think a lot of times there are misperceptions, obviously. And then there are perceptions, and I think Anthony pointed this out when we were saying in regards to, does it really matter if the character is cast as black or white or whatever? It's really the story. But we are not broad enough, and a lot of times media fuels the misperceptions more than the, you know, the, what I would say, the, I don't want to call it genuine, but the more real perceptions that are out there. And that's what becomes a difficulty.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure we understand that it's not just about us.
Right.
It's not just about us. And I agreed with you so much, Anthony. I did. It was just more so when I thought about the kids.
I want to interject something. My son is 28 and my daughter's 25. All right. When they were kids, I took my son to see Cowboy Bebop in the movie theaters, and I took him to see City of God. My daughter, she went with me to see Attack the Block. She went with me to see a bunch of different foreign films, anime films. We went to the movie theaters because that's how you make sure that they understand that they can widen their palette for other things. So the world that I have with films, my relationship with it was passed down to them. So when you think about it in that sense, as parents, as friends, as acquaintances, if we interject these things into the conversations, if we hear people saying, oh, they only do this, you should step up and say, no, they also do this. This exists as well. This is a part of the thing as well. Now, my kids, well, my daughter really loves movies now. She watches all different kind of things. None of them go as far deep in as I do, but they have that history. Because I remember being a kid and going to Arrow's videos and going through the anime section and picking up Ninja Scroll and everything else and just coming home on VHS tape. Right. You know, Wicked City and all that stuff. And then I went back as an adult and went and bought all the Blu-rays. So, you know, you're right. It's not just about me as an individual, but I am the center of a circle that ripples out. And if I don't have my shit together, what ripples out from me will be the same thing on everybody else. But I do understand what you're saying.
All right.
Can I jump in?
Kevin, we'll go to you, and then we've got to wrap it up. We're actually going beyond time. So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I think the one thing, Freedom, your mom sounds like she was awesome. Anthony, obviously, you're a cool dad. I'm doing the same thing with my kids. But I will say this, especially around once George Floyd had was murdered last year. I had I think it might have been Halloween right the year before, but I have a white friend that we grew up together, and his daughter had told a black girl, like, you can't be Elsa, right, because she was black, right? And my white friend, he asked, like, how, they obviously told her, no, anybody could, be Elsa, blah, blah, blah. But he was asking me, like, how do I talk with my kids about this? And I was like, one, you just talk to your kids about it. But the problem is, I think that so many parents don't teach, right? And that's the issue. And so your mom was dope. Anthony's doing it. Many of us, I'm sure, are doing it, but I think that the vast majority aren't teaching. I mean, even for my kids, like, I'm not trying to explain to them, like, sexuality and all that kind of stuff, but, like, hey, there are some men that are attracted to men. There are men that marry men, you know, like they're gonna learn it anyways, but exposing and helping, teaching them at an age appropriate level, I think is so important. So as you're saying, like exposing and allowing them to understand, like these are the many different characters that make up the human race, and we should care about all of them. The problem, again, I think, is are people actually teaching that?
Yeah, it does come down to, and I'm going to use Anthony's analogy. We know there are a lot of menus out there for the different types of things that we can digest, right? But not always do we have access, nor do we know about those menus that exist. And same thing goes with film. You know, my nephew who's 14, I have exposed him to so many of the things that I watched as a kid, and he's had a much broader sense. He loves, one of his favorite series is Back to the Future. And there's no Asians in that film, in any of the three films, right? It's got very little diversity. But I explained to him, I go, you know, what would you think if there were films of similar nature that did represent? And he loves Big Trouble in Little China. He loves, what was it? I've shown him Better Luck Tomorrow. I mean, now that he's 14, it's about providing exposure and access. And as parents and people who raise kids in a village, we need to be a bit more mindful of that. So that is all our time. I really want to say, Kevin, I owe you, Anthony. We need to get together. I've missed both of you guys. I haven't seen you in like so long. So I would love to catch up now that things are somewhat getting more open. And again, I appreciate your time to take the time on a Friday night to have this discussion. And then Freedom, thank you. Elizabeth, Pam, and I don't know who the phone caller is, but thank you guys for being here. And then of course, Lisa, thank you for allowing this forum to happen.
Thank you, Christian.
Please support the Silver Spring Town Center, and there's a lot of other events. Our festival is July 15th to 25th. Kevin, when's the dates for the next festival?
August 19th through 21st.
All right, check out the DC Black Film Festival. Anthony, what festivals are you working on now? What are you doing?
I have the North Beach American Film Festival out here in North Beach, Maryland, June 24th to 26th.
Okay, so that's coming up first. Okay, so definitely check these film festivals out. Are both of you guys doing virtual, or do you going to have any in-person stuff, or?
I'm doing virtual this year.
Yeah, same here, virtual here. So, okay, I was just curious. But again, thank you guys. Thank you for your time. Everyone be safe, healthy, and vigilant, as I always say. But again, thank you guys. Have a great night and the rest of your weekend.
And thank you again, Christian,
My
for pulling
pleasure.
this all together. It was awesome. Thank you to Kevin and Anthony and all the
And of course,
panelists.
of course, Gina and Leslie and Kelvin, they're not here, but again, I'm so glad they were able to join in. So
Great. Hope to see everyone again.
Thank you,
soon.
Christian.
Bye.
Bye. Stay safe out there. Bye.